Morning, Dan and Amy, coming to you live from Zanger's Industrial Supply in Melrose Park, part of our AM 560 Signature Bank Business Tour. And boy, oh boy, more developments in the world of cloaks and daggers and international intrigue. Talking, of course, about the so-called Vault 7 document dump by WikiLeaks yesterday of some 8,000 pages of documents obtained that relate to the practices and tools of cyber espionage at CIA.
And they're watching you on your smartphone.
Yeah.
They're watching you on your smartphone right now, Dan.
Well,
and when you go home, they're watching you even when your TV's off.
At least one piece of information that surfaced, this malware coined Weeping Angel, which is weird because it was the name of my Cinderella cover band.
Right, back in the 80s. I know.
And
you did really good work on that band.
Thank you very much. I had the hair back then. But Weeping Angel allows a user of Weeping Angel to essentially monitor someone, surveil someone through a smart TV while the TV's off. So this is one of the kind of spy novel cyber espionage tools at CIA's disposal.
But the timing is great because everyone's so concerned about wiretapping and whether President Obama ordered the wiretapping of Trump Towers.
I'm not sure the timing is so great from the perspective of CIA agents and analysts who are having their work disclosed. Sometimes their locations disclosed. There was a covert base that was mentioned, a covert base in Europe that was mentioned in some of the documents that were released.
Ew.
So I'm not sure they're so happy about that. I'm not sure we should be so happy about that either. We want the intelligence community to be able to, gather intelligence as safely as possible so that you inform civilian political leaders about the world in which they're making decisions. That's the importance of the intelligence community that seems to be politicized and beset with leaking and being hacked and having their information leaked and playing politics, and it's all in this swirl. And to help us make sense of this, we're pleased to be joined now by Larry Johnson, who's a former analyst for CIA and a counterterrorism expert for the U.S. State Department. Larry, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. So why don't we start with the Vault 7 WikiLeaks document dump? What should we understand from whatever you've been able to ascertain from the documents that were released yesterday?
This does not appear to have been what I would call an official leak. In Washington, when there's agreement on policy, information and secret details about those policies will remain internal. When there are disputes, it gets leaked out. This is sort of a hybrid of that, in which it appears that some contractor who is working with the CIA and was familiar with the process took this information and gave it to WikiLeaks. What has been revealed, I think it's one of those things. I think there's going to be the claims, this damages us, this really hurts America. But I view it a little different. I think the real danger here, and you were talking about it, is, with respect to your cell phones and your TVs, is we now live in an age when the government has power to come into your home, monitor what you're doing, watch what you're doing, record what you're doing without a warrant. The traditional constitutional protections that government authorities could not just open your door, come in, and start searching for what they wanted, is now gone. That has been erased through the technological developments. And so, in a way, I view this sort of as a public service. If it alerts the American public to what has actually transpired, it's important that we have good intelligence service, but it's not important that we empower the intelligence services to have unlimited access to your information.
So how can we protect ourselves if we're not doing anything wrong? We have nothing to hide, but we don't want to be spied on by our television that's turned off, or by a baby monitor, or by a smartphone. What could we do to protect ourselves?
Well, there's not a lot you can do. You can either, shut all electricity off to your home. Go live in a log cabin up, on Lake Michigan, or
sounds nice.
Recognize that you've got to rely upon the government to exercise some restraint. And the the reality of our government, and it's been what I call bipartisan abuse. We've seen abuses under Republicans and under Democrats, and there's really no accountability in this system. And I think the furor we've seen surrounding the Donald Trump and Russia thing is it's actually going to serve a purpose of helping expose what this problem is, because I've got friends who are still in senior levels in the intelligence community. They're telling me 5 months ago that the stuff about Trump and Russia was garbage, that they don't have any evidence, but it was being done because it was telling the intelligence community they didn't like Trump. So that's an example of how somebody within the intelligence community gets a bug at their rear end and decides that they're going to go off on national jihad. The very tools that they say exist to protect us from foreign enemies actually can be used against us internally. And I think it's important that attention be brought to bear to this.
Well, so it's interesting you raised the specter of Trump on the Trump-Russia story, which you are talking to colleagues who say it's bogus. We talked to a former assistant director of the FBI yesterday who said he has heard the same things. He believes it to be bogus. What about the Trump allegations the other way, that he was surveilled or wiretapped, not presented any evidence yet? However, you did have a NSA whistleblower, Bill Binney, who was there for 36 years. And
I know Bill.
Okay, and I understand widely respected. That suggested essentially what you're suggesting, that he doesn't know, but it very easily could have been something where he was surveilled without a warrant, and perhaps an indication that occurred is some of the leaking of conversations he had with foreign leaders in the run-up to his inauguration and since. What's your sense of and position on what Mr. Binney had to say?
Well, no, I think Bill is spot on. There's one thing he didn't suggest, and there's another way this, what I've been told is actually how some of this happened. And it is the British version of the National Security Agency, which collects electronic information, communications, computer, phone conversations, is called the GHQC. The GHQC can collect against American citizens without violating our laws. I mean, it's spying, but they can do it without running into trouble in Great Britain. And my understanding is that they were the ones who actually collected the information, but then passed it in a way that was under the table, that went into folks like the Director of National Intelligence and the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. And once they had that material in hand, they started disseminating it. So it's a way that they actually may not have run afoul of American law from the standpoint of actually they themselves penetrated Trump, but that there was a wink and a nod to get our British cousins to do it, and then information and disseminate it. So, but my point in this is that there is cooperation between the United States and the UK. There's a very excellent documentary out it's called 0 Days, and it lays out what led to our effort to penetrate the nuclear program in Iran and the Stuxnet virus and how that got out. And what it helps people understand is how there are tools there that they can be used for purposes that will protect us from a national security standpoint. But if not properly controlled, they can also be turned around and used on Americans. And some people think, well, they're just going after Trump because maybe he did something wrong. My concern in this is if the government decides that you are perceived as an enemy without any proof whatsoever, and without having to go through the processes of submitting it to a judge and explaining what the justification is, it then reminds us that the average American becomes very vulnerable to having their privacy invaded.
So what you're saying in regards to Trump is that you can avoid getting a FISA warrant if you go and use our British allies to wiretap the Trump Tower?
Correct.
Okay.
And see, the other thing that's interesting in this is it appears that the Department of Justice circumvented the FBI in trying to get the FISA warrants. The reports are out that there were 3 attempts. The first 2 failed. The last one, the name of Trump out of it, it implied that it was just a search on computers that were dealing with the Russian bank. But again, that was not, my understanding is actually the FBI that was not under the FBI's direction, and it wasn't because the FBI thought they had proof. It was originating in the Department of Justice with people who had political ties to the Obama administration.
Yeah, speaking of...
Trump was wrong. I think Trump was wrong on what he said that Obama ordered it. I don't think Obama ordered it because this is being done with intelligence methods, which means you leave the president plausible deniability.
Right.
But he certainly was aware of what was going on, and as a constitutional scholar, that he should have immediately said, "Wait a second, that's wrong. That's got to stop. Cut that out."
Let me ask you this, since you were in CIA, and this seems to be a central question about culture in the intelligence community. Do we have a situation where these intelligence agencies like CIA are so politicized that there are camps for different politicians, and so you've got Obama loyalists there and maybe Hillary Clinton loyalists who are leaking information on Trump, really almost engaged, as some have said, in a fifth column action, and then maybe you've got some Trump loyalists or people that are just trying to play it straight down the middle, regardless of who the president is, and do their job, and this is running into conflict with one another, and you have really an agency that is at war with itself, or agencies that are at war with each other.
Yes, that's absolutely what has happened. But when I was at the agency, I was at the time I was considered a conservative, but I was working on the war in Central America. I was the Honduran analyst, and then I became the regional analyst for Central America. So this is back when we had covert support to the Contras, et cetera. Yet my job was not to back the policy of Ronald Reagan. I saw my job as to make sure that I gave President Reagan and then President Bush the correct information. And what happened, though, was that there was, because, as we struggled for what I called analytical objectivity, we did face pressure from some on the Directorate of Operations side that they accused us of undermining policy because what our analysis was showing was not going with what the administration policy wants to be. So there's been that kind of pressure throughout. But what's happened now is it has very much become politicized, where the intelligence agency, CIA in particular, is supposed to be the Dutch uncle. That guy, that cranky old guy that pulls you aside and tells you all the uncomfortable truths you don't want to know without having any vested interest in you other than just simply caring for you. And unfortunately, what I've seen transpire, and I understand has been going on, it's become very heavily politicized, so that, in fact, what's supposed to be an objective agency is now turning out to be a cheerleader. And that's dangerous for America, because you don't need to have analysts who get bought into a policy and then are going to push it regardless of, without stepping back and looking at information and making sure that the president understands what that information is.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like that characterization. I like to think of like my CIA analyst as Alec Guinness from Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Yeah.
I don't so much like the cast of this John le Carré novel that we're living through right now. He is Larry Johnson. He's a former analyst for the CIA and counterterrorism expert at the State Department. Larry, thanks for joining us and sharing your insights. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.